you about some of our players as well. And I want to start with Bruno Fernandes, because this is a player that I think a lot of us fell in love with when he first joined. Goals galore, assists everywhere, still has high levels of creation now. But as the captain, he's faded. He's despised by at least 50% of the fan base. Is he a player that when the new rebuild, quote unquote rebuild, starts, is he a player that we should look to sacrifice and move on sooner rather than later, in your opinion? I want to go to Dizzy first on this, bro.
Well, first thing is, how do you want to play? There is a style of play where Bruno Fernandes is the perfect archetype to be in that team. Secondly, I think the problem with Bruno Fernandes is, he came in on such a high that he was never ever going to sustain it, and any fall off from that would be met with this level of sort of vitriol, I suppose. And then two, I think he's getting the Pogba treatment. I think everybody expects world class from him. So literally every game that anything short of that is like, well, no, he's crap anyway. I've said it, he's crap, get him gone. When the reality of the situation, you look at it, fam, the midfield is so imbalanced. I don't know who you could toss into that midfield that could actually create chances and do anything meaningful in this team. When you have McTominay behind you, who struggles to make 5-yard passes and hides behind players, and then you got an 18-year-old who just got here, and then if it's not him, then God knows who else is in that midfield. And then you got forwards, I think collectively they're on 5 goals this season. I don't know, but I think if you wanted to make a statement, I'm fine with Bruno Fernandes getting sacrificed. I think he's good. I don't think he's world class. I don't think he's a world beater by any stretch of the imagination. I think he's just a very good player. But if we're trying to build a system that doesn't fit him, I don't think he's the type of player where you have to shoehorn him into a team at all. I don't think that's the case.
He is, again, the Pogba example is actually a very good example to have, because just like Pogba, he's also a luxury player. If you have a team who can keep the ball well enough, you have to build around him. You have to say, look, he will try all these foolish, mad passes. Most of the time won't come off, but when it does, it's amazing. We need players that can get the ball back, keep the ball, and put him in positions where he can assist or score. That's the kind of team that you need to have for Bruno. But unfortunately, in 2023, going into 24, luxury players are not in style. You just can't have them. Everyone has to work. Everyone has to keep the ball. Everyone has to contribute in a positive way. And because of that, we can't have him here. Like, I don't say if we had a midfield that kept the ball well, I just don't see how he fits that, because at any moment he can lose it. You know, like listen, I know I can see where you're gonna come, what angle you're gonna come with, but unfortunately, I just don't think this team or how we would like to play in the future as fans suits a player like Bruno Fernandes. I think he's a good carrier of a team, maybe at a lower level. Obviously, at Sporting, he's doing well. National level, he does well too. But I think the weight of Man United has proven too much for him. And that's okay, because it's proven too much for nearly every player since Fergie left. So it's not like an poor indictment on him that he can't carry the weight of Man United on his shoulders. No player can. And that's why we need a team. And that's why, for me personally, he would have to go as part of that new team. It's just, and plus, I don't think his petulance has helped us in the last 2 seasons.
Okay, so you mentioning that, I think if Bruno didn't moan as much as he did, most people would have no problem with him. I think the moaning is what bothers people. I don't care at all. It doesn't bother me at all. I truly, and obviously the losing the ball, I think that was a perfect analogy when it comes to the Pogba treatment. When Pogba was the only player on our team that was any good, all of a sudden everything was his fault. I mean, there's been people who have hated on Bruno since when him and Pogba were here because we chose to like Bruno because he was producing or whatnot. All the Balance fans have basically kind of stuck by him. I don't agree with this notion of like there's people literally out there who say Bruno's not good and he's trash and he's this. It's like let's keep it a buck. The guy is a good footballer. He really is. Like, the problem with our team is, as we all see it, is, and I disagree. I think if you do have a midfield behind him who can keep the ball and you can recycle and get the ball to him and be like, all right, Bruno, do what you got to do, create chances, get those shots off, you can build a team that works with him. I think there's no issues with that. Like, I'm sorry, we're looking at, and Brandon, like your team with Arsenal, yeah, you guys got a lot of pretty footballers who play with the ball around the box, Odegaard, those guys. But when it comes to taking on that shot and making something happen, you don't have that guy. And I'm sure in some moments you would love a guy like Bruno who you're like, oh, that dude just said, fuck it, I'm going to take this shot on and I'm going to do something special for the team. Our team is very far away from that. So, yes, he is a luxury player in that sense. But I think if you were to do something like Salah Rashford, who you guys know I love Rashford, and bring like a Rafael Leao and bring in other wingers, guys who who can add width to your team, who can whip balls in, who can recycle the ball and do things that don't just leave it all on Bruno to create, I do think you'll see a player who's not just always trying the Hollywood pass, who's not always trying to do it himself. Because I think at this stage, when you look at our team, Pogba was the same way. People would get on Pogba for staying on the ball, dribbling around, looking around. Guess what? Because there was nobody else. He was like, well, I got to do it because our whole team sucks. I think it's very tough for me to say sacrifice Bruno first. I think you start building and then you start making decisions around, okay, does he have to go? Because you're basically saying get rid of your best. I'm sorry, he's our best player in my opinion.
But, you know,
kind of crazy for me.
And I hear that, but then Arsenal had the same thing with Aubameyang and Ozil and all these different players.
Can I jump in? Right. Yeah, how old is Bruno Fernandes?
28, 29, something like that.
29. So if you think of it as a long-term thing, I think you get rid of him anyway, because kind of like what KJ was saying, his inability to retain possession more than anything else. Like you say, he's a luxury player. And you can have luxury players in your team, but the rest of the team has to to beat Manchester City and Liverpool and even Arsenal now to a league title. You have to work hard on and off the ball and be able to retain possession really well. The one thing that I say, like, for example, the best comparison for me would be Liverpool, because Mo Salah's more of a luxury player. He probably is a player that loses possession of the ball more often than not, but because he's got that structure around him, that the rest of the team around him works so hard to retain the ball and to get the ball back, as well as Salah, then you don't really see that so much. And he kind of is the one who comes up with the goals, the assists and all that. And I think Bruno Fernandes could do a similar thing for Manchester United. But the amount of time that it's going to take you guys to rebuild and get this squad proper, with every player around the pitch working hard on and off the ball, retaining the ball well, I think Bruno Fernandes will be past his best by then. So I'd look to get rid of him now, while you can get decent money in for him, as well as, you know, other luxury players that you got in the team, like Rashford, for example.
Do you know what? I think it's really good points everybody's making on this. Some people will want him gone because they don't think he's good enough. I'm just going to respect that opinion. It's not worth the argument 4 or 5 years in. We know what the pros and cons are. I think it's right. For me, there's another side to this, which is people that are in failing businesses, failing governments, schools. There's people that become synonymous with that failure, whether it's their fault directly, indirectly, or they're part of a collective. And I feel that there are many players over the last 10 years. If you think about the last 10 years, Fellaini's face always pops into my head. Pogba's always pops into my head. Lukaku pops into my head. Obviously, the managers all pop into my head as an example. There's loads of players that I look at and I think, and whether it's their decline, whether it's they didn't reach the standard we expected, I always think about Falcao and how excited I was about him. They're for different reasons. Bruno's another player that when you think of our failures, I think his face is there. Rashford's another player. When you think of our failings, his face is there. Sometimes the best thing we can do, and also you all know how powerful I think fan bases are. There is such a toxic relationship between those two players specifically and the fans. Some that love them, some that hate them. If you remove them, yes, if you're someone who loves them, you're going to go for a bit of, your guy weren't good enough. Nor was their guy in the fight between the two, right? Because they're all bloody gone. But then you bring somebody new in, and if you're bringing them into a new environment, and that's what we're hoping for, we're talking about this in the context of a new environment, it removes some of that anger, that toxicity, some of those problems, and hopefully it can galvanize the fan base, which is also what's going to be needed for us to try and get back to the top. So I think there's footballing reasons to move them on. I think there could be system reasons, as Dizzy pointed out. At the same time, I just think removing a poster boy of failure is also a good move. And it will also send a message through that dressing room. You don't, whether you're the captain, whether you're the star boy of this team, if you don't perform right, or if your attitude's not right, or if your face don't fit the system, not the face don't fit, it's probably the wrong expression for it, because that's more about personality. If you don't fit what we're trying to do anymore, you're done out here. That is how Man United used to operate when we were successful. It's how City operate now. It's how Madrid operate now. It's how, listen, they're a much smaller club than us, but it's how Brighton operate now. Well-run clubs operate in that exact way, and we need to adopt it back. We need to remove Player FC from our football club, and the club can control that. So I've loved both players, but I would personally move them both on as soon as possible. I'm talking probably the summer for them too. I would sell them both, cash in. You get good money for them, reinvest it, and move on. That is what I'd do.
You can have a resurgence from a player though. Like Granit Xhaka is a prime example of that for Arsenal. Like, look at the way that we wanted him out. You know, he was awful defending, especially, you know, the amount of red cards he used to get, the mistakes and that. But then when you got a team around him and you push him a bit further forward, so he's not in the area where he can make mistakes and he can actually thrive, then you see the best of Granit Xhaka. And I think if you was to do that with Bruno Fernandes, build a team around him, let him thrive at what he does, like creating goals and assists and stuff like that, then I think you see a different Bruno Fernandes altogether.
Yeah. The thing is, the key thing with Xhaka though is that your club made so many changes that there was enough time for there to be a resurgence. Like the mood in your club changed before you started like Xhaka again. Once everything was starting to go in the right direction, that's when I was like, oh, you know what? We were mean to Xhaka. He actually tries really hard. He loves the club. And then all the PR spin happens, and then everyone likes Xhaka again. But with Rashford and the Brunos and the Shaws and the Martials, there's too many players in that category for us to wait for at least one of them to just turn it around. Like literally.
I have a question for everyone on Bruno, because we brought up his age, right? And being past his best or whatnot. And I understand that when you hit a certain age, yeah, there's a bit of a drop off. But we have also seen players in today's football, in today's world in sports, go into their 30s and be fine. The way Bruno plays, I don't necessarily, he works hard off the ball. He does. Like, that's one thing. Everybody said you need players who want to work. He doesn't. No one in here can say Bruno does not go out there and give his all, and he shows up every game he can. Like, that guy could easily have been like, yeah, I played 16 games in a row, I need to rest. He plays every game. My question about him is, do we feel that his game requires a certain set of athleticism or anything? Is he going to really, like, when you look at how he plays, is age going to kill him, in my opinion, right off the bat?
I think so.
You think so? Because I think he's going to be good till he's like 33, 34.
The only reason why I say I think so is because Bruno, like you said, and that's one thing I will give him credit for, is his work rate is great. He does chase every loose ball, and you know, he'll run his socks off, he'll cover every blade of grass, etc., etc. The only detriment to that is the older you get, obviously, the more his legs are gonna go. And the problem that we have now is when Bruno chases these loose balls, we end up having too much space in the middle because he's chasing every blade, he's covering every blade of grass, chasing every ball, and he's not where he's supposed to be. The older he gets, the more difficult it will be for him to get to put from wherever the ball is back into the position that he's supposed to be in and cover every blade of grass. He needs to, to me personally, I think he needs to calm his game down just a little bit and stay a little bit further.
I think his football IQ when it comes to off the ball is very low, in terms of it's very rash. It's very, I'm just going to run around to get the ball. There's very rarely any points where I'm like, yo, Bruno's positioning and his tracking of the play was brilliant there. It's not like a Modric who's with age, just aged like fine wine. And he doesn't run around and make like a lot, but he's always in the right spots at the right times to make the correct passes and the right tackles, right? Bruno's not that guy. And I don't even think it's within him, his style, to even become that kind of player where he's scanning, he's not doing too much running, he's jogging around, but he's always in the right spot. That's one thing where I'm like, the age will kill him, because I don't know if he would want to adapt to his new body. Because, you know, like when his body slows down, you're going to have to adapt to it, right? I don't think he would want to accept that. Like, he still wants to be the same high energy, high intensity player. I just don't think he would adapt well. So that's why I think, yeah, when it comes to age, it's his mind that will let him down more so than his body.
Yeah, listen, I think there's some great arguments for him. I think there's some great arguments against it. Mine isn't so much his ability, like a lot of people's would be. It's other areas, and very similarly to Rashford as well. I just think you've got to try and move individuals on. Let's do some more super chats that have come through from the audience. Terry, why have you blocked me on Twitter? Don't know. It depends what you said, bruv. I don't know what your name is on Twitter. I don't block many people, but if they chat shit, I normally do. Last time we were this crap, Hitler's heart was still beating. Jesus Christ.
Oh, flip it out.
Glad Fergie's still here to see Liverpool back on the perch. Oh, we've still got more league titles than you. Onana can't save a bloody PDF.
None of the goals were Onana's fault today. Like I will say that.
Yeah.
Gibbs White's goal was actually a flipping finish and a half. Like so. Yeah,
I'm not really mad at him for the goals today, to be fair. Taking off Kobe was a crime against humanity. Nah, Eric Ten Hag, F off, sell everyone. Yeah, I'd get rid of most of this squad in the next 2 to 3 years. The main new sub was the turning point for me with Meh out. That sub literally cost us 2 goals in the game. Told you all. I think he started subconsciously sacking himself since the style of football comment. I don't think you're overly wrong, my friend. I do not think you are overly wrong in what you say there. There is a lot of truth to that, you know. Not Ten Hag in or out, but I want Sir Jim Ratcliffe to make the decision after a review. Also want him to outlast many of these players. It's funny you say that. Right? I want to read you a tweet here from Mr. Mark Goldbridge, who, you know, I respect a lot of what he does and his opinions. He said this: fans have every right to sack Ten Hag, but it'll empower these lazy players to have sacked 2 other managers. And if we're replacing him, we need take time to find the right person. 3, a strategic review over the next 4 months will be far better if we have the manager's input. The problem that you have with that, I think the final point, it makes sense unless he's got a lot of tarnished relationships. If he's got tarnished relationships, is that input going to be what you want? The thing is, you can sack this manager and also stop the empowerment of these lazy players. And the advantage we have this time around is we literally have new people coming in to run it. So and that's not a dig at Goldbridge. He's also said I'm no longer opposing to changing the manager as well, which he was a few weeks ago. And to this super chat, I'm with you. I want Sir Jim to come in and do something. But I just don't see a world where Ten Hag turns this round. Does anyone have an example of a manager going through what Ten Hag is going through? New ownership have come in and stuck with that manager and they've turned it round.
No,
I can't think of an example.
Every new ownership that I've seen always sacks the guy that was there. I've not seen a new ownership stick with the manager that they put in because it's not their man. It's not the guy they picked. Nor probably is it one like what? Look, Chelsea did it with Tuchel and he won Champions League. You know what I'm saying? He won trophies and they got rid of him. You saw it with Saudi and Steve Bruce. They knew they were sacking him. They're acting like they weren't going to do it. They're going to see what he can do. Nah, they knew he was gone for the moment they stepped in. You see, even
oh yeah, they knew. They knew. They knew 110%. They knew exactly what the hell they were doing.
Yeah,
in relation
they
to
were
that.
doing well in the championship. New ownership comes in. They sack the guy and bring in Rooney to do worse. So every new ownership will bring in their own guy. So there's hope that I understand hoping that maybe Eric Ten Hag turns it around with the Sir Jim, but it ain't happening because nowhere in sport does that happen.